Nina Marnie, I'd just like to acknowledge that this forum is on Kaurna country. I want to pay my respects to Kaurna elders, both past, present and the emerging leadership. That was a great welcome this morning too, so from young Robert. And my talk is about a hungry world that likes fish too much. And I'll talk about it in the context of Ngarrindjeri. And so our country, where we fish, is near the Murray Mouth. So we fish on the Young Husband Peninsula, and we've been fishing there for maybe 20,000 years, maybe longer. And so it's an area called the Meeting of the Waters. It's where the river, the lakes and the Coorong come together with the Southern Ocean, and it has provided for our mob forever. And we see it as really important. So throughout the Young Husband Peninsula there are a number of middens, and those midden sites are indicators of our cultural economy. And so there are hundreds of them, and we did a dig with Flinders University a number of years ago, probably a decade now, and we worked out how much protein source was in one of those middens. And the volume that we calculated was that there was enough protein source to feed a Ngarrindjeri family every day for 1,600 years. And so we're in the industry, in the pippy industry, we've been trying to get into this industry for a number of years. We were 200 years ago. It's taken us a while to get there. In and about just before the Great War, about 1913, a man by the name of David Unipen and others from Rauken were involved. And so David Unipen, you'll understand, is the Aboriginal man on the $50 note on the Australian currency. He was called to this Royal Commission. And one of the things that they were talking about was food security. They were really concerned about food security on missions like Rauken and Point Pearce and up the river at Swan Reach. And one of the suggestions that he put forward was, look, how about we get the opportunity to hunt and gather on our traditional country, on particular areas, so that we could actually take care of this food security issue, because it was a real problem. We're just coming, as I said, into the Great War. There was lack of food, lack of opportunity for community, etc. Well, it took them 109 years for us to be able to acquire a fishing licence. And so in 2017, we purchased a fishing licence in the lower lakes and Coorong, and we now harvest pippies, or Kuti as we call them, and other fish species. One of the things that really concerns us, about what's happening on our country is that the area in the lower lakes is a Ramsar site, and we know through science that from an ecological perspective, there's significant change. And this change in the last 30 years has been greater than any other time in history. And so the hour is late, and there is a need to undertake significant restoration work to bring about some of those changes, because we do understand that ecological character is linked to cultural character, and our cultural character is one that's a fading imprint on the landscape, and we're working really hard to bring about change, and one of those changes is being involved in industry. So the pippy industry a number of years ago was unregulated. So fishermen could just go and collect the amount, whatever they wanted to, sometimes up to over 1,000 tonnes, so 1,200 tonnes, that sort of stuff. But some of that wasn't even counted, so it could have been even greater than that. Well, it nearly collapsed. The industry was on the verge of collapse a number of years ago, and so they brought in regulation. The regulation enabled science to indicate a total allowable catch for the year, and that started to develop a sustainable industry, which is certainly what we want to be in. So it was about 6 years ago we acquired a licence and started to harvest pipi. Initially, we owned 1% of the industry, and currently today we hold about 17% of the industry. That's our country too. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? So the growth rate within the industry has been significant over a very short period of time, and we're really keen to continue to grow and develop. Now, part of this process has been a native title process. We were very concerned about our sea country and getting back onto Young Husband Peninsula, where we always were. And so what it's allowed us to do is to undertake work on Young Husband and Sir Richard Peninsula and in and out through the lakes. And some of that work is about clean-up work because, we talked a little bit earlier about plastics and the problem of plastics. It's probably the biggest item that we find in the clean-up. And we've even found items like lifeboats, so that wash up coming out of the Southern Ocean and wash up onto the Coorong amongst a whole heap of other nets and etc., which cause their own issues. This is the sort of stuff that we're wanting to grow around our business. So a number of years ago when we first got in, it was predominantly a bait business. And so bait around the time that we entered was somewhere between $2 and $5 a kilo, somewhere around there. Probably a month and a half ago, out of the Sydney market, it's about $41 a kilo. We now don't sell any of the Kuti into the bait market. Most of the bait is coming out of Asia. All of our harvest is going to a food source, and so we think that it's always been food to us, and we realise the benefits of it, and we're fortunate to be in an industry that we were connected to for a long time, but also right at the right time. Sometimes it's about timing, and getting involved in this industry was certainly about timing. Things started to move. There were a number of people that were significant in driving the industry, and it is a privilege to work with Ngopamuldi as one of those companies. We now are, as I said, a 17% owner in the industry, and we own about 25% of Ngopamuldi, and we're keen to continue and grow that relationship. One of the problems that we had really early in the Coorong is that it was turning hypersaline, and there were species of birds coming back into the Coorong that never came to our country previously, and so that issue, I think someone talked a little bit earlier about water coming down the system. It needs to be resolved in some way because that affects the industry too as well. There's been a bit of talk about pumping the Coorong out into the Southern Ocean, and what we would have then is hypersaline water and contaminated water getting out into the Southern Ocean that would affect this industry, and we're really concerned about that too as well. Kuti Co as a structure is owned by the Untitled Corporation and Ngopamuldi Aboriginal Corporation, which I'm the managing director, and we own it 50% together with the common law holders of Ngarrindjeri. So every Ngarrindjeri person is a common law holder, and they own 50% of this particular company with me and my family. The board, Julian Morrison, who was so generous in the introduction, is a board member and has been a great support for us. Grant Rigney's a common law holder and myself. We formed the board. And I don't know about you guys, but I sometimes think the smaller the board, the better. It just seems to work. Our harvest technique on our country is manual. We see that as being really important, but we also see it as a sales opportunity, but we also want to be able to harvest this sustainably, and that's why we stay away from mechanical harvesting. We're really keen to continue manually harvesting. Our guys this year harvested for the first time 70 tonne, and they finished last Wednesday. I don't know if you remember the weather last week, but it was pretty rough, and so they were hitting the water, and our guys harvested at night, and it was about 3.5, 4 metre swells, so you can imagine they were knocked over pretty well right through the night to get the last of the 26 bags or whatever it was they harvested. So they were pretty happy to get out of there as well. So there's lots of occupational health and safety issues, but it really is a young man's job, and you need to be quite fit. Our current quota, it's 157 tonne. The TAC for this year was 400 tonne, so it's 0.4 of that 157, so about 70 tonne we harvested this year. This is a chowder that the pippies are put in. So what we're trying to do is develop products that you can actually cook in the bag. We see that as being really important. But again, it comes good. A good product in usually leads to a good product out. And so making sure that it's clean and green and pristine, coming out of pristine waters, is really important. The pippies are alive. When we catch them, we put them in map bags, so in modified atmosphere packs, and they're alive until people cook them. So that's how fresh they are. And this is just a projection of financial returns. What we found that this year it's probably double that amount. We found that it was the lowest TAC, but the highest return for us this year, and that's because probably supply, but a little bit, but also people taking hold of the protein source and realising that it's not just fish bait, but it's actually good for you. We undertake training and employment, so we initially trained within our community about 20 young people, both male and female. We came up with a team of 5 and a couple of reserves because it is quite tough work. So you can imagine middle of the night, maybe 6 to 8 hours, sometimes 10 hours depending on tide, physically harvesting pippies, and they would get probably close to 20 kilos in one netting opportunity, and so you need to be quite strong. That was the timeline. I talked a little bit about some of the product that we're trying to sell. One of the really big things is about working together and our young people getting the opportunity to be involved in an industry that we're connected to, but also having employment to be able to improve their lot. That is just absolutely prime for us. And that's the end of my presentation, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Uncle Derek. And I think you'd all agree that it is a really fascinating story. The employment opportunities, the working on country, the sustainable business, and a sustainably managed fishery and environment. So great. Thank you for sharing the story, Derek.